Good afternoon, folks. It's Bob out here at Sorrento Hill, standing beside the unfinished cordwood walls on my house. What I'm doing today is I got a tree I got to go cut down, and before I do that, I need to sharpen a chain. And I thought, what better time than to go through and give you a little review on my chainsaw sharpener. Now, this is from Chicago Electric. It's a Harbor Freight deal. I think these are around $30. They currently stock them at Harbor Freight. And so I thought I'd show you what I do for sharpening my chains and give you a little review about that. But first, a little background. I started out with my first saw was a Poulan Pro that I bought at Walmart, and I bought it for the express purpose of clearing some brush, and just there were a lot of trees up at the place we lived, and we had some that were down. I thought, well, it'd be good to have a chainsaw. I've always needed one. Had never run a chainsaw before. And so when I started out clearing this property, that's what I started with. And, I had the chainsaw, and I had never run one before. And I cut about 2 or 3 trees, and then it got to where it just wouldn't cut. And it was actually started to smoke the chain, which, I've come to realize along the way that is not a good thing. You never want to have your chainsaw chain get so hot it smokes. What happens is it gets dull, and instead of gouging out, cutting out little chips of wood, it gets so dull it just starts rubbing. And that friction causes heat to build up, and that's a bad thing when it gets hot, because then you get the friction. It gets your bar hot, and most of the bars, especially if you have a lightweight bar, they've got light steel and aluminum in them, and boy, it'll just tear up a bar really bad. It'll stretch your chain. It'll also work harden it to where you'll never be able to get it properly sharp again. And I started out with a set of round, the typical set. You find them in a little blister pack at all the big box stores at Walmart and all that. And it had a couple round files with a little handle. It had a gauge that you put across your links to show you how the rakers need to be filed down. And then use a flat file on the rakers between the teeth. And I just could not get it sharp enough to work right. And I think part of that is because I got the blade hot, the chain hot, and work hardened it. But at any rate, that didn't work out too well. So I went and I bought this $45 a Stihl saw. I bought one of these fancy Stihl sharpeners, had the Stihl brand on it and the Stihl colors and all that. And it worked a little bit better. But the problem that I had was I couldn't get it cut straight. And the problem was that I'm extremely right-handed, and evidently I was getting one set of teeth sharper than the other, and so the chain, it would cut off. I always cut off to the right, and it's going to cut where it's going to cut. You can't make it go straight if it wants to curve. So I got tired of that. Realized that Poulan Pro, it just wasn't up to the task, and so I bought my first real chainsaw. I bought a used Stihl 044 off of eBay, and ran it for about 2.5, probably about 3 years. And one day it was getting low on power, and I thought it was just running out of gas, and it was about empty, and it stopped on me. It was about empty, but not all the way empty, so I put gas in it. I went to try to start the thing, and it had locked up. The bottom end had locked up, not the top end. The bottom end had locked up, and just about pulled my arm out of socket. I took it to the local dealer here, and he took a look at chainsaw shop. He's a Husqvarna dealer, not a steel dealer. And he took a look at it, and he said, I hate to tell you this. He said, it's not the top end that's locked up. That's pretty easy to fix. That's not that expensive. He said, the bottom end is locked up, so it's no use. So I bought a brand new Husqvarna, and I bought the Husqvarna 372 XP. It's one that's popular around here by the logging guys. It's a 71cc saw. I've got a 24-inch bar on it, and I've also got a Alaska mill with a 24-inch bar, and I also bought a 28-inch bar for that, and this handles it with no problem. But no matter how good a saw you've got, the bottom line is, if your chain's not sharp, it doesn't do you any good. So I actually wiped her down for you. So yeah, if a chain isn't good and sharp, it doesn't do you any good. Now, and I just use this one for cutting down a hickory tree and bucking it up, and so it needs to be sharpened. And I've got another chain here to sharpen. Now, I've got the manual sharpener, I got a stump vise and all that good stuff, but I always have an extra chain. And whenever I go out in the woods to cut, I always take an extra chain with me, because it's a whole lot easier. You know, you're going to have to take the chain off anyway. If you're going to sharpen it, you got to take the chain off, right? Well, you've been running it, that chain gets hot. And handling and sharpening a hot chain isn't much good. So since the best way to sharpen is with it off, and because I've never been able to sharpen it with it on the chain, on the saw very well. So I just, instead of having to sharpen the chain while I'm out there in the field, I just take a second one with me. Now, it needs to be sharpened also. And the thing I like about this is it gets it sharp evenly on both sides, and it cuts good and straight. This is one of the best $30 investments I've ever made. Now it looks kind of rough. I got it bolted to a bench. Right now it's sitting outside. I've got a cover that I put over it to keep it dry. But some of the features of it is it's got a fixed angle on the grind as far as the bevel. It's got a little abrasive disc. And when I bought this, I bought a 2-pack of the abrasive discs, and I have never had to change it, and I have absolutely no idea where they are, because I've had this thing for about 4 years now, and it's held up pretty well for me. It's got a stop to control how far down it goes. It's got a stop to control where your chain stops. It's got a little squeeze handle up here that tightens this down here. It's a clamping device to hold your chain good and steady. Again, this is a gauge for it, so it's lined up properly, and you adjust it using this screw. These little screws here can advance the chain through. Down on the bottom, it's got a handle that you loosen, and then you can adjust the angle. And it's pretty neat because you adjust it, set it for what angle your chain is. The one I'm using right now happens to have a 30 degree. So I just set that. And then when I get ready to do the other side, I'll just move it. Did it just move? Didn't move. I'll just change it. And the thing that's neat about this is I've got ripping chains, and they've got 10-degree teeth. And one of the chains has every third tooth is 10 degrees, and then in between those, it's got a 0 degree, like a chisel tooth. So I can sharpen all of those with this one sharpener, and it does it much faster than I could do it by hand, and it gets it even, so I always get a nice straight cut. So what you do is you just take your chain and set it down on this. And like I said, it's got the gauge that stops it, so that and holds it the proper place. And now this has, I forget how many teeth it has. I counted them at one time. And so it's hard to keep track. So what I do is I always have a black marker in my pocket. You know, it's funny, I just show you. I also carry, I hate when I drop stuff. I also carry a carpenter's pencil, and I got an ink pen, and I always carry those in my back pocket. My wife thinks it's funny when she sees how full I keep the pocket. But what I do is the first tooth that I sharpen, I'll put a black mark on it. And that way I know when that black mark comes back around, I'm done. Just a little thing that I do. And again, this chain hasn't been it hasn't been sharpened as many times as the one that's on the saw right now. So I have to back off my adjustment here to get it to line up. There we go. And always wear my safety glasses when I'm doing this. Ooh, dirty. Been working on a project and got sawdust all over. There we go. Just turn it on. It's not very loud. Advance it to the next tooth. And of course, each time you're only doing half the teeth. So there you go. That's all there is to it. And then once my little black mark comes around on this side, then I'll change the angle, loosen the screw, change the angle on it, and do the teeth on the other side. And in just a few minutes, I'm ready to go with the chain. It's nice and cut, nice and sharp, and it'll take good size chips of wood out. When they start getting about half the size or so, or a little less than what they started out, I like to sharpen the chain. Or swap them out and put my other chain on, because I found when you wait until you get to the point where it's just taking a little sawdust, little shavings, coarse sawdust down, it's past time to sharpen or swap out your chain, and it's just going to take forever to cut. So I'll go ahead and swap my chain out again. I always take a backup chain with me. Sometimes if I'm way deep in the woods, I'll take two, because I got three of the chains that fit this 28-inch bar. And when I'm ripping boards using my Alaska mill, well, I've got two of those as well. So when it gets to where I'm struggling to cut, I can just swap the chain out, and off I go again. And then I'm not having to stop halfway through cutting to sharpen the chain. I just swap it out, and that way also when I sharpen the chain, I'm sharpening a cool chain instead of a hot chain. It's easier on my fingers. So this little Chicago Electric, you can buy them at Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight's all over the place. If they're not local, I believe they'll ship to some places. There are other brands that cost a lot more. I bought this one from Harbor Freight because I needed something, and they had them in stock, and it was handy. I've had this thing, like I said, for at least 3, if not 4 years. I'm still on the same disc for sharpening. I've never had to change that out. The discs are pretty cheap, pretty simple to change out. But it's a little jewel. It's, 30 bucks. I wish everything that I spent 30 bucks on worked this well. I still have the hand sharpener in my bag that I keep in the truck. If I needed it, I would use it, but as long as I don't need it, I'd much rather use this. I get a lot better result from it. And I think you'll get a lot better result, and it'll make using your chainsaw a lot better, because sharpening chains won't be a chore. It won't be time consuming. You'll get good results every time. It'll cut nice and straight. I keep a little flat file. Well, I guess it's not flat, it's triangular, but a narrow file there here by my workstation where I've got it, so I can, whenever I need to I can just file on the rakers and get them the right height. That's one of the things I didn't know early on when I was sharpening chains, is I didn't realize I had to file the rakers down, and so I'd sharpen the chain, and it didn't cut any better than before. It was just like wasn't cutting. And I mentioned that to my dad, and he said, "Well, did you file down your rakers?" No, didn't even think about it. So I filed those down a little, about 10, 12 strikes with the file, and man, that chain cut like butter. So would I buy again? Yes, I would buy again. Would I recommend this Chicago Electric from Harbor Freight electric chainsaw chain sharpener? I would definitely recommend it. In fact, I have recommended them before. I know a couple other people that bought them based on that recommendation, and they like it, say it makes it go a lot quicker. And for 30 bucks, you can't go wrong. So if you run a chainsaw very much, get you one of these. You'll be glad that you did. All right, I'm going to go ahead and finish sharpening this chain. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you like and subscribe. Hope that was helpful to you. And don't be afraid to get out there and do something you've never done before.